Hello and welcome back to Something Z, and welcome to If Naruto was Raised by Kakashi Part 2. Last time on the What If, Kakashi took care of Naruto after Minato and Kushina died, but after that he trained Naruto until Naruto eventually became a Genin, and once he did he was put into a squad with Sasuke and Sakura, who all together passed the bell test by working together to fight Kakashi. Then about a week after becoming Team 7, Team 7 went on a C-ranked mission, which they found out was actually mislabeled, and a couple hours after learning this, Zabuza appeared and he began to fight Kakashi, with him eventually dying to a Mashinobi who later takes him away. And once the dead Zabuza was taken away, Kakashi passed out and he was taken to Tazuna's house to rest. Okay, so now it's that out of the way, let's jump into the video in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we begin this what if a couple days after the last part, and Kakashi just woke up. And when he did, he found himself in a room he didn't recognize. And seeing this, he began to slowly get up, with him still being pretty banged up. But after Kakashi lifted up the top part of his body, a woman walked into the room. And when she saw Kakashi, she quickly ran over to him and she pushed him back to his back. And she told him that he was brought here by his kids, and that he's currently inside of Tazuna's house. And hearing this, Kakashi began to relax, eventually giving into his exhaustion and pain, making him go back to sleep. So now skip a couple more days, and once Kakashi felt ready enough to move, he got out of his bed and he grabbed some crutches, which he needed in order to stand. Then he grabbed his Genin and he brought them into the woods. And when they were far enough, Kakashi told them that he will be teaching them how to walk on vertical surfaces by practicing on the nearby trees around them. And after he was done explaining the concept, the three began to practice, with Naruto and Sasuke failing after the first step, while Sakura however was able to do it perfectly the first time. So the two continued to train all day trying to walk up their respective trees, while Sakura however went to the store with Tazuna. But right before Sakura left with Tazuna, she gave Naruto some advice to help him walk up his tree, which did help him somewhat. Then the second she left with Tazuna, Sasuke asked Naruto what did Sakura tell him. And because he wants Sasuke to get closer as a teammate, he actually tells him, unlike the original canon. And because of that, by the end of the day, Naruto and Sasuke got a decent handle on walking up vertical surfaces, but they can only do it for a short span of time, so they haven't completely mastered it. And once the sun came down, the two went back to Tazuna's house for dinner, and while Team 7 was eating dinner, they learned about Inari's stepfather, and how he was a hero to Inari, but then he was killed by Gado and his men. And because of that experience, Inari has stopped believing in heroes, and the whole village has been scared of Gado. And hearing this, Naruto got filled with determination, so he then scarfed down the rest of his food. Then he ran outside the house, and he began to run to the nearby forest. And once he got there, he began to train again by constantly sprinting at trees, trying to walk on the vertical surfaces, trying to increase the duration he can hold onto the side of the tree. And he kept on doing this until they eventually passed out from running out of chakra a couple hours later. And when he woke up, he found a girl standing right above him in a pink kimono. And seeing this, Naruto immediately pulled out a sword from his side. And seeing this, the woman put her hand to her side, and she seemed like she was about to draw out a weapon. But when Naruto actually looked, it looked like the woman wasn't actually carrying a weapon, so he put his sword back into his sheath. And when he did, the woman seemed to calm down. And the second he put it down, Naruto began to apologize until the woman shook her head, and she told him that it was her fault for standing above him. Then she asked why was Naruto asleep in the woods, and Naruto tells her that he was training to get stronger. And after that, the two began to talk. And after a couple minutes of talking, she tells Naruto that someone is only truly strong if they have someone or something that they want to protect. But once she said that, she told Naruto that he needed to go finish collecting medical herbs. But before he left, Naruto asked what was his name, and in response, he told Naruto that his name was Haku. Then he leaves. And right after Haku leaves, Sasuke appears out from behind a bush, and he tells Naruto that it's time for them to train. So the two then trained until it was night, and by the end of the day's training, they were both able to climb up their trees with better ease, with them increasing their time limit. And when they were done, they went back to Tazuna's house for dinner. So now we skip to the next day, and when they were ready, Sasuke, Sakura, Kakashi, and Tazuna went to the bridge Tazuna was building, and they left Naruto out from the mission because he was completely knocked out, because his body finally gave out from all the training he's been constantly doing for the past couple days. And after a while, Naruto finally wakes up, and when he does, he quickly got to his feet, and when he did, he ran to Inari's mom and he asked her where did everyone else go. And after singing for a bit of time, she told him Tazuna and his team went to the bridge a couple hours ago. Then after hearing this, Naruto quickly grabbed all of his things and he began to run through the forest to get to the bridge as fast as he could. But after a couple minutes of running, Naruto looked around, and when he did, he saw that there were cut marks on all the trees in the area, and they were all leading back to Tazuna's house. So worried what they meant, Naruto turned around immediately, and he began to run back to the house as fast as he could. So now we jump back to the rest of Team 7, and currently they were standing on Tazuna's bridge watching him work, and scouting out the area to make sure that they wouldn't be jumped. But just now, Team 7 noticed two people standing on the water next to the bridge, and when they got a good look, they were able to tell that it was Zabuza, and the Mashinobi that they saw killed him. And when Zabuza got spotted, he began to create a thick mist, which completely covered the bridge. Then once the mist was created, the two enemy Shinobi jumped onto the bridge, bridge, and once they landed, Zabuza ran towards Kakashi, and seeing this, Sasuke ran straight towards the masked shinobi, but after a couple moments of fighting, the masked shinobi surrounds Sasuke in a dome of ice mirrors, with there being a reflection of the masked shinobi in each one, which kept on throwing ice needles straight at Sasuke, but luckily with the help of the Sharingan, Sasuke was able to somewhat keep up. And while all this was going on, Sakura ran towards Tazuna, and she stood in front of the man with a kunai in her hands, so she could protect him if she really needed to. So now we jump back to Naruto, who was able to get back to the edge of the forest that was near the house. And before Naruto ran into the open, he saw Inari's mom tied up in a rope, being held hostage by two thugs that were carrying bladed weapons. But what caught Naruto's eye the most was that Inari was running straight at the thugs trying to get his mother free. But what Naruto saw was that Inari was not carrying a weapon of any kind, and the thug he was running straight towards was getting ready to slash at Inari. So before Inari got too close, Naruto made 5 Shadow clones, with them all running towards the thugs, with 2 of them throwing a kunai at both of the thugs' hands that were carrying the weapons, 2 more throwing a kunai into each of the thugs' right kneecaps, and the final 2 just ran straight at Inari, and they stood in front of him to make sure that he wouldn't get hurt. Then once the other 4 Narutos got to the thugs, 2 Narutos went to each thug, with them being able to take care of them with ease. And once the thugs were knocked out, Naruto untied Inari's mom, and he used that rope to tie up the 2 thugs. Then once he was sure that the 2 were safe, Naruto undid the Shadow clones. And once the clones were gone, Naruto went back into the forest and he began to run towards the bridge again. And after a couple minutes of running, he was able to see the bridge. And when he did, he saw that the bridge was mostly surrounded in a thick mist, which made it so he couldn't see anything that was happening inside. And because he recognized the mist from when Zabuza used it a couple days ago, he knew that something dangerous was going on. So he ran even quicker, eventually running head-on into the mist. And once he was in the mist, he was able to see 2 different fights going on, with Kakashi fighting Zabuza and Sasuke somewhat fighting the masked shinobi. And because Naruto knew that Kakashi was fine, Naruto ran to the Ice Mirror Dome. And once he got to it, he saw that needles were flying out of the mirrors towards Sasuke at a rapid pace. So seeing this, Naruto drew a sword and he tried to break the ice with it. But after around a minute of slashing at one of the mirrors without making so much as a scratch, Naruto believed that it would be weaker on the inside. So Naruto then ran into the dome towards Sasuke, and he was able to get to Sasuke before he began to get bombarded by waves and waves of ice needles from the mirrors. And after some time, Naruto starts to pass out from using too much chakra, and from getting hit and losing some blood. And while Naruto was flickering through consciousness, Haku threw an ice needle at Naruto. That would have been a fatal hit. But before the needle hit, Sasuke jumped in front of it, and it hit him instead. And when the needle hit, Naruto was able to wake up enough to process what was going on. And what he saw was Sasuke standing 1 second, then collapsing the next. And seeing this, Naruto tried to shake him awake. But after a couple of shakes, it was obvious that he wouldn't wake up. And based on Sasuke not moving and the amount of blood that was coming out of him from all the needles that hit him, Naruto believed that Sasuke had died from blood loss. And seeing that, Naruto only felt one thing, and that thing was rage. And because Naruto sees Sasuke as more of a comrade, and because it was drilled into his head by Kakashi to value his comrades more, Naruto has a much stronger reaction to Sasuke's death than in the canon. So Naruto's eyes go completely red for a second, and he began to draw out the 9 tails of chakra. And unlike the canon, it's not just a mist of red chakra circling around him, but instead it clings to him and it starts to bubble. And the more it spread, the more Naruto began to change, with his face whiskers becoming more prominent, and his nails extended and became sharp claws. And all the cuts that were just made from the ice needles were completely healed, with some disappearing after the cuts got smoked. Then eventually the chakra surrounded him completely, with it creating ears and finally 1 tail out of chakra. And seeing what Naruto was becoming, Haku began to throw ice needles from every mirror straight at Naruto to try to kill him. But before the needles were even able to make contact, Naruto let out a mighty roar, which was the power of his chakra was able to make it so the needles stopped in their place, making it so they just fell to the floor. And being frightened by that display, Haku began to jump from mirror to mirror to try to escape. But while he was outside a mirror, Naruto jumped at him, and before he was able to react, Naruto was able to punch Haku in the mask, launching him through an ice mirror. And the second that he made contact with the mirror, it shattered. And once that mirror shattered, all the other mirrors shattered with it. And after flying for a couple feet, Haku eventually lands on his back. And the second he landed, he jumped to his feet. And when he did, Naruto came charging towards him, with his fist already pulled back for another punch. But the second he was about to go in for a punch, the mask Haku was wearing came off, revealing it to be Haku. And the second that Naruto saw this, he remembered how Haku had reacted when he pulled out his sword, and how he had seemed to go into a battle stance. And realizing that he could have stopped all this before Sasuke had died, Naruto got even more pissed off at the person that was standing right in front of him. So he immediately goes in for another punch, hitting Haku in the face again, making Haku get launched a couple feet away, with him barely landing on his feet. And because he was hit in the face, he was dazed from the attack. But before he was able to reorient himself, Naruto ran up to Haku, and he put his hand into a claw, and using all of his force and momentum, he pierced through Haku's chest, killing him almost immediately. And once Haku was dead, Naruto began to slowly calm down, eventually giving giving into his exhaustion, from not only the energy he had used in the ice dome, but also all the energy he had to exert in order to use the Nine Tails of chakra. So the chakra around Naruto began to dissipate, and after a couple seconds, it disappeared completely. Then once it disappeared, Naruto passed out, making him fall right next to the corpse. Then a couple minutes after Naruto passed out, Kakashi was able to get the upper hand in the fight against Zabuza, and he went to stab Zabuza in the chest with his Chidori. And because Haku was dead, no one stopped the attack, so Zabuza died from the Chidori. And once the body of Zabuza fell to the ground, the mist Zabuza created began to dissipate, with it disappearing after a minute. And once it was completely gone, Kakashi and Sakura saw the bodies of their fallen comrades. So Sakura and Tazuna ran over to Sasuke, while Kakashi ran over to Naruto. And after checking Naruto's pulse, he was able to tell while he was unconscious he is still alive, and same for Sasuke. And seeing that their two comrades were knocked out, the remaining Team 7 decided to just rest until they woke up. But after a couple minutes, around 4 dozen people began to walk up to the bridge, with someone in a suit leading them. And the second Tazuna saw him, he shouted Gato. And in response, the man in the suit smiled, and he told them good job for taking out his two shinobi, and that they saved him the time and resources for him to do it himself, because they failed him so many times prior to this. Then Gato shouted for his men to take out Tazuna, and hearing this, the group of men began to charge at the remaining Team 7 and Tazuna. And seeing this, Kakashi shouted for Sakura to protect Tazuna. Then once she stood in front of him, Kakashi uncovered his Sharingan, and he put lightning nature chakra back into his hand, forming a Chidori. Then once it was created, he ran towards a group of men and he began to impale them with a ball of lightning, making it so it killed them in one hit. And whenever the men tried to hurt Kakashi in some way, whether it be stabbing or slicing, Kakashi would just simply dodge it. And after a couple minutes of this, there was only a dozen henchmen left and Gato, and at best, Kakashi only had a couple scratches on him. And seeing what he must do, Kakashi began to charge straight at Gato, ignoring all the other guys that tried to hit him. And after a couple seconds, Kakashi appeared in front of Gato, and he stabbed him in the chest, directly where his heart was. And once Kakashi made contact, Gato instantly died. And because he was at the very edge of the bridge, Gato fell directly into the water below. And Kakashi was about to finish the rest of them off, but before he was able to, the bridge began to get flooded by villagers with weapons. And seeing this, the remaining thugs got scared, so they ran away. Then once the event was over, Sasuke began to wake up because he was able to gain enough chakra to gain consciousness. And because the person they were protecting Tazuna from was dead, the mission was over and labeled as a success. So after a couple of days, Naruto and Sasuke were healed up enough to move, and because of that, they decided that it was time for them to go back to the Leaf. So after a couple of goodbyes, they left. And on their way back to the Leaf, Naruto began to think about everything that happened during the mission. So he comes up with his ninja way, and his ninja way is that he will never back down from a fight, and he will always be strong enough to protect his comrades. Okay, so now we skip about a week into the future, and the third Hokage just summoned all the team leaders of the Leaf, and he told them about the upcoming exams, and after some talking, he asked Kakashi, Asuma, and Kurenai about their getting, and whether or not they believe that they are strong enough to take the exams at all, which they constantly say they're getting are strong enough. Meanwhile, the same things are happening with Team 7, so Konohamaru was being held up by the collar by some foreign shinobi, and Naruto just tried to run at him to try to save Konohamaru, but before he was able to get to him, he tripped. And in the end, Konohamaru got saved by Sasuke, who was in a nearby tree, but before it could become an actual fight between the two, another foreign shinobi appeared, and he apologized for his teammates' rudeness and actions. Then the two walked away. So now we skip to the next day, and when it was morning, Kakashi assembled Team 7, and he told them about the upcoming Chunin exams. And the second that Naruto and Sasuke heard about it, they were willing to go through with it. But Sakura, however, was hesitant, because she remembers the Land of Waves mission, and how Sasuke and Naruto almost died. Then she pointed out that Naruto apparently lost control of himself, making him kill someone in the process. So what's to say that it won't happen again? But after a long debate from both Sasuke and Naruto, Sakura finally caves in, and she decides to go along with it too. And once she agreed, Kakashi told the Genin that the exams will be in about 1 week, and that they will meet back here the day before the exam so they could get the information they need, such as the location and time. And once Kakashi said that, the meeting was done. So now we skip to the end of the week, and that whole week was spent with Naruto practicing his fighting skills and sharpening up his Shadow Clone Jutsu, with him sparring with himself thanks to the Shadow Clones. And with that, Naruto learned that he can learn faster with the help of Shadow Clones, and that what another Shadow Clone experiences goes to him when the clone disappears. And that's basically it. Okay, so now we actually skip to the day of the exams, when Team 7 got to the exam site. But when they got to where they believed the exams were taking place, they saw that the hallway was full of examinees waiting to be led into the exam room. And when they looked at the doorway, they saw 2 shinobi standing in the doorway, not letting anyone in. And after a minute of Team 7 waiting for something to happen, a fight starts to happen between an examinee and the person that was in the doorway. But before it could escalate to an actual fight, a person in a green jumpsuit with a bowl cut jumped in between the two, and they calmed the examinee down, thus stopping the fight. Then after the fight was over, the person in the jumpsuit began to look around, and after a couple seconds, he made eye contact with both Sasuke and Naruto. And when he noticed the two of them, he walked over to Naruto, and he told him that they were meant to be bitter rivals since their birth, and that they will have to grab the competitive torch from their senseis. But when Naruto asked what the heck he was talking about, the bowl cut guy looked over to Sasuke, and he told him that since he was from the Uchiha clan, he was born with special gifts that he was unlucky enough not to get. So for him to prove his point and achieve his dreams, he must beat him and become stronger. Then the guy asked would either of them want to fight him, which Sasuke declined. But because Naruto wanted to know what the guy was talking about, he said yes. So Team 7 and the guy walked to an arena not that far away. And when they got to the arena, Sakura counted down. And when she got to 0, the two getting ran towards each other. But Lee was able to easily outspeed Naruto, and the two began to exchange blows. With Naruto only being able to dodge and block, while Lee was actually able to go on the offensive. Then before Naruto was able to react, Lee was able to kick Naruto in the gut, launching him a couple feet away. Then when Naruto got to his feet, Lee told Naruto that he was nowhere near as strong as him, and that he's putting Kakashi to shame. And hearing this, Naruto got fired up, so he began to fight Lee with everything he had. So he made as many shadow clones as he could, which was around 200. But even with that, Lee was able to easily take down the Naruto clones. But with each clone that was destroyed, the more knowledge to fight and move was put into each of the Naruto clones. So when it was only the real Naruto left, Naruto was able to somewhat keep up with Lee. But after another kick to the gut that made Naruto fly into his back, Naruto was declared the loser of the match, with Lee apologizing for his earlier statement, saying that he can, after a bit more training, could be considered his rival. And intrigued about Lee from watching his fight with Naruto, Sasuke walked over to Lee and he accepted his earlier challenge. But after a couple minutes of fighting, Sasuke also got defeated by Lee, even though Sasuke was using the Sharingan. But before Lee was able to deliver the final blow, a poof of smoke appeared a couple feet away, and when the smoke cleared, the Genin were able to see a turtle who was in the smoke, which to Team 7's surprise makes Lee stop in his tracks. And when he lands, he runs to the turtle and he apologizes by saying sorry. But just then, another poof of smoke appeared on top of the turtle, and in that smoke appeared the person that looks like a more grown-up version of Lee. Then the second that Naruto saw the grown-up Lee, everything began to make sense, because he had seen Kakashi and Guy's rivalry matches firsthand in the past. So he then understood why Lee took such interest in him. But before anyone could say anything, Guy kicked Lee in the side for using a forbidden jutsu. Then in the span of 10 seconds went to crying and hugging with him, saying he's sorry, with Lee also doing the same thing. And seeing this, Team 7 tried to leave, but before they could leave the room, Guy noticed them, mostly noticing Naruto, and the two began to talk about how Kakashi was doing, and what he was doing to train Naruto. Then after around a couple minutes of talking, the two leave. And shortly after those two leave, the three leave and they go to the actual exam hall. So now we skip to the actual exam, and everything we skip is the exact same as how it happened originally. So all the Genin taking the exams went to a room filled with desks, and they were arranged in a way so they couldn't sit with their teammates. And when everyone was sitting down, the main instructor got out of his seat, and he stood at the very front, and he tells everyone the rules of the exams. And when he was done explaining the rules, the examiner gave all the examinees a test. And by the end of the test, Naruto still hasn't answered a single question. But when there was a couple minutes left, Hinata, who was sitting right next to Naruto, moved her answered test closer to Naruto so he could see it clearly and cheat. But before he was able to get a good look at it, Naruto stopped in his tracks, because the moment he moved his head, someone behind him was caught cheating, and from that he got scared. So he told her that he would be fine, and that he would be able to do it on his own. So a couple minutes later, the main examiner got out of his seat, and he went to the front of the room. Then he told everyone that the test was now mostly over, but then he told them that there was actually a 10th question. But before he says what the question is, he says that whoever fails this question will be permanently banned from taking the exams, and that if one person gets it wrong, then the whole team fails. But there is a way out. If you don't want to take the question, you and your team will have to fail this exam, but you can return next year. And after around a minute, the people that wanted to leave left. And when the main examiner believes that they all left, he says it's time for the final question. But instead of saying a question, he just tells the class that they all passed. Since the question was, would they still try, even knowing that if they failed once, they would fail permanently. So Team 7 has now made it to the second phase of the Chunin exams. And that's normally the What If. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next time on Something Z.